never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
I mean, what's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
Hey, as a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stuff.
Am I going to get sued?
We got legal on this?
I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome in to the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. Sorry for the late start. I was on Dan Patrick just now, live.
You big timed your own show. For Dan Patrick.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
We ran a little over, Dan and I. Just talking some NFL, talking ball with Dan Patrick. But we're here. We're ready. We're live on YouTube. And we might crank out 3 shows today. Who knows? See what happens.
Wow.
Behind the scenes.
Some fun stuff.
But the real one today, the NFL schedule will be released tomorrow night, and they're drip feeding the schedule out right now.
It's already flying all over the place. We've got Black Friday games. We've got international games. We've got all kinds of stuff coming out. Christmas games.
We should break one of the games. Let's do that.
Break one of the games.
Yeah, let's make up a game. Like if I said Patriots at Dolphins week 1, that's probably pretty safe. It's happened the last 7 years.
Right. I mean, you know who's playing whom. You just don't know necessarily when. You know? So you just need to make up a date.
I got the Patriots at the Dolphins. Yeah. I got the Jets and Bills playing.
When it doesn't happen, just say, I got bad info.
Remember last year there was a schedule leak guy that was going super viral and nothing was right. He was like,
he was just doing this.
Packers Bears week 10 and Fox game and in Canada, and everybody's like, wow, look at this.
Because he was just doing this, start putting
but
stuff out.
He put like a little context behind it too, which is great. Anyway, so we're going to talk, we'll talk a little bit about the schedule stuff, talk about the Chiefs at wide receiver 1. We got some email questions about the Chiefs wide receiver 1, and a very good question about PFF grades and WAR, wins above replacement, our value-driven metric that is based off the grades. So we'll get into a lot of that today. Mm-hmm. What else going on in football?
Well, so what we were going to start with was, before we actually had games leak out, the idea being, who would you want to see get the most primetime games? Because to be honest,
the Chiefs now. You want to see Mahomes.
Right, because to be honest, I'm kind of underwhelmed by the concept of the schedule release. We already know who's playing whom. I don't really care when it's happening, generally. We're going to be watching basically every game we can anyway. So I get it if you're planning a road trip. I need to know when the Bengals are playing wherever because I have to book flights and whatever. That makes sense to me. Just otherwise, when random games are taking place, I don't know.
Yeah,
They're happening. I don't really care about the order, but a lot of people do. But the thing I think that is kind of interesting, or at least affects you, is who's playing on prime time. Because there's a lot of bad games in prime time, and I would like to avoid those in favor of good games. So who should be getting as many primetime games as possible? The Chiefs, obviously.
Cardinals.
Got to be the front runner. The Cardinals.
You got to see the Cardinals rebuild effort here.
No.
I just want to see the Amazon Prime schedule, see what Al's getting himself into this year.
Yes, and we're now in a world where there's a couple of new rules, I think, this year, where no longer has every team got to appear in primetime games.
Is that right? No, they can't flex them anymore. They thought they were going to flex them, and then they nixed that.
But I believe they've now instituted a rule where not every team must have a primetime game. Consequently, the Cardinals should never appear on primetime this year.
You know what's not new?
What?
The PFF NFL podcast is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern is right there to help you advance your money moves. Buying your first home, planning to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow? Well, Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Team up to understand needs and address goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. So where are some of the foreign games?
Well, So let's start with this. The Cardinals should not be appearing in primetime. this
Who should
year.
have the most primetime games?
The Chiefs should be appearing in primetime as much as humanly possible.
It's all the best teams.
The Bengals should be. No, not necessarily all the
Chiefs,
best.
Bengals, Bills.
Chiefs, Bengals, Bills should be in primetime a lot. The Jets should be in primetime a lot. Regardless of how good they are, the Jets being in primetime will be fun.
Big story.
Because Aaron Rodgers. And frankly, that's even more interesting if it's going badly. So that's one where there's no downside, you know?
How about the Bears?
The Bears.
As like a team that's not scheduled to be one of the top 6 or 7 teams, but it's like the Justin Fields, all the new talent that they've
Bears
added.
would be a good one. Big market team as well.
Yeah.
Chicago.
Get the Bears up there.
Bears would be a good one. I don't hate that.
How about, finally, the Jags? The Jags should be getting some not the most primetime games, but we're going to see the Jags on Sunday or Monday Night Football this year.
What about Green Bay? Because they're usually a primetime stalwart because they've had Brett Favre and then Aaron Rodgers for the last 20-odd years. Now they don't, but they're still, it's still a compelling story, right? How well Jordan Love is playing, how good the Packers are, whether or not they made a mistake letting go of Rodgers. It's still interesting, even if their quarterback stinks.
Yeah,
I'm not saying he does. I'm saying we don't know.
I think teams like the Packers, the Giants, they all get primetime games no matter what. Remember how many times over the last 5 or 6 years that it's like the Giants are on primetime 3 out of the next 4 weeks, and they have no business being there.
But how much of so New York, it makes sense because they're, New York. That's a pretty big media market. Green Bay, there's 7 people in the back of somebody's garden otherwise. Like, there's nothing to that place. They exist because of their success and quarterback play. But seriously, you go back.
We have Green Bay ownership listening to this podcast. Please don't trash them.
Go back before Brett Favre. The Packers were like struggling to sell out their they were a backwater in NFL terms as well as geographic terms. Right.
The Magic Man?
Then they get Brett Favre, they get Aaron Rodgers, they go on a 20-year run of, very good play, and it's impossible to get tickets and they sell out the stadium years in advance, blah, blah, blah. But does that still hold if the success goes away?
You could make the same statement for the Patriots.
Yeah.
The Patriots pre-Drew Bledsoe were ready to move and get out of there, and they could barely get people to that old stadium. And then Bledsoe turned things around, and then, of course, Tom Brady really turned things around. But both teams may be saddled back to
right. And I think that
mediocrity.
backs up my argument, which is you wouldn't want the Patriots on primetime much now, right?
At least this year, you would. I think it takes a year for that stuff to kick in. The post-Brady Patriots were interesting because it's like, okay, what do you do? For their new quarterback, first time in 20 years,
right.
Cam Newton's taken over.
But now they're not.
interesting. They're still somewhat interesting. They're not bad.
But like in this
But they're a mid-level team, the same way the Packers could be this year with Jordan Love. But I think it's going to take a year to figure out, okay, what's happening.
You would put the Giants on primetime because New York is watching, regardless of how good or bad they are, right? You are not doing that now for Green Bay or New England because they're not that interesting and they're not as good, so they're not bringing the entirety of their fan base to the table anymore.
Man, we're having a June discussion in May. Who are your favorite? Who else do you want to see in primetime? Eagles, Cowboys?
Yes, Eagles. Eagles are a good one.
Cowboys are always there.
They're always there, but I'm less
the
interested in them than the Eagles this year.
Any other sneaky teams? I'll say this. The PFF Power Rank. I want the Chargers. Chargers going to be hype. I'm ready for the hype train again. Give me the Chargers.
So I want a couple of early primetime games for Denver, and then I want the ability to never see them again if it's the same as last year.
If it's bad, yeah.
Like I don't want another
intrigue
one of those
because Sean Payton's there.
Yes. And early in the season, even if it's terrible, it'll be compelling. But like when you get to whenever that game was against Indianapolis, that like I wish I could remove from my brain. There were like 12-9 or whatever it was, where it was just one of the most miserable football occasions in NFL history.
That was the game where I'm sure Al was like $25 million or another 12-9 overtime game, Broncos-Colts.
Like
I don't
seriously debating if the money is worth it. You know? And the steak dinner in the back. Like I could have one of these at home. Or
I can have a free steak and a 12-9 overtime game versus the $25 million.
Right.
Whatever.
He must have been at that point seriously considering whether it was worth the money. And I don't want another one of those. So I want the ability to
those
maybe.
Are fun.
No, they're not though. Late in the season, they're not. Early, maybe. Like if it's week 2, then it's like, oh, this Denver thing's unspooling in a hurry. If it's late in the year, you're like, oh God, we've seen it already. Just enough. Put it out of its misery. End it.
The Dolphins would be interesting. I mean, look, you and I, we're football fans, right? We want to watch every single. I think the Browns have fascinating storylines. We just put them at 9 in our power ranking. Debate away.
But that's another one where it gets boring quickly. Like late in the year, and you'd see the same thing already.
Yeah. So like going into the season last year, we said wow, the AFC's loaded. If they have like 11 teams that could have unbelievable seasons, but there's also going to be a few of these good AFC teams, good on paper, who will not make the playoffs. And we didn't know who they were going to be going into the year, but it turned out it was Denver, who was just brutal to watch, and it was Cleveland, who just couldn't get over the hump, even though Brissett was playing pretty well at quarterback, and then Deshaun Watson wasn't great when he came back. The Ravens, because they lost Lamar Jackson, it ended up being teams who look good on paper at the beginning of the season. I would just say a team like the Jags are going to be a sneaky primetime team. The Lions are going to be a sneaky primetime team, I think. Seattle will be a sneaky primetime team. They're going to, if Geno Smith plays in the ballpark of where he played last year with the talent that they've accumulated, if they hit on another draft class, the Seahawks are making an impact. So that's it. Let's talk about some of the games that have been announced.
Okay, we got a Black Friday game.
Aaron Rodgers emerges from the darkness to play in the first ever Black Friday game.
That's a pretty strained bit of imagery.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what's happened.
I mean, it is. It's a 3 p.m. game on the Friday, the Black Friday.
Yeah.
It's an interesting timing. Now, it's basically a holiday, right? Nobody's working, so it's not like it needs to be prime time because everybody's at work. But still, it's a weird time, I would have thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's an off day here in America for most.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of college football on that day. I mean, I'm going to be in the middle, so I'll probably be slapping some Thanksgiving leftovers onto a cookie sheet. As much turkey and mashed potatoes and everything I can. Warm it up. That's what I eat.
Cookie sheet?
Yeah, I just throw all the food onto a big cookie sheet.
You just rebake it.
Just to reheat it.
On a baking
So I'll probably
sheet.
be doing that right before the game. That'll be my lunch.
You reheat it in an oven on a
Yeah.
baking sheet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's outstanding. The stuffing, the mashed, everything. Just throw it in there, warm it all up, warm the gravy up on the stove, dump it on everything, and go. So I'll probably do. Maybe I'll wait. I'll do that right at 3:00, right for kickoff time.
Okay.
Right in the middle of the day.
All right.
Ugh, man, they're trying to own we have to watch 3 Thanksgiving games. Just trying to spend some time with the family here, Sam.
Oh, Thanksgiving is not. I mean, Christmas is. So all the games, obviously, Christmas is on a Sunday this year, right? So all the games
Christmas
are on the
Eve
Sunday.
is the
Christmas
Sunday.
Eve is the Sunday, right?
Yes.
And
so
then
they're already
Christmas Day,
taking our Christmas Eve,
right?
like
then,
they did last year.
Then Christmas Day is getting the triple header. So there's 0 family time for anybody.
Yes.
All the games and then on Christmas Eve, and then more 3 games on Christmas Day. It's like, no, to hell with your family. We're NFL's coming to town. So yeah, that'll be fun. What other games have we got? We got Kansas City, Cincinnati, Joe Burrow, Mahomes, 5.
New Year's Eve
Yes,
in the 4:00 window.
4:25. We got a Christmas Day, one of the Christmas Day games. The Giants, the Eagles, December 25th in the 4:30 p.m. window. That could be. I mean, I doubt the Giants will be as good as they were last year, but the Eagles should still be.
Which game is that? Where are they playing?
That is, I assume, though it's the graphics are annoyingly, they're using the verses rather than at. So it's, I assume it's Philadelphia.
I think you still always put the home team second.
That's what I assume they're doing.
Even with verse.
So Philadelphia, that's at Philadelphia, Christmas Day.
And we've got the international games.
Yeah, of which featured Jacksonville playing back-to-back games. So
They did that a few years ago, right? They're
I
going
think this
to,
is the first time, right? They're staying there, essentially. So
I thought they did
Jacksonville.
that before.
I read a tweet saying it was the first time. I haven't fact-checked the tweet. So, could be, could not be. So they're playing week 4 and week 5. I mean, it doesn't matter at or it's in London. Then Ravens-Titans are also week 6. And then the 2 Germany games. Frankfurt, week 9, Dolphins-Chiefs. And week 10, Colts-Patriots. So Tyreek Hill doesn't get to go back to Kansas City. He's in Germany instead.
Yeah, why would you take that away? I wouldn't take that one away.
See, the problem is,
They had that one
think of
locked
the
in for a
number
while,
of things you need to factor in when you're running this schedule.
Yeah, but they didn't just rerun the algorithm this week and say, "Oh, you're going to Germany." The international games they definitely had.
Right, but I'm just saying,
Handpicked a while ago.
but you take that thing, you move that away, something else collapses. You know what I mean? Imagine the number of things the number of plates spinning you must have to have.
How about only one NFC team playing internationally this year?
Yeah.
They used to do a really good job. Remember when they started in London, it was always AFC versus NFC, right? They were like, oh, you can never have a division game over there, or you can never have a conference game over there. That's a competitive disadvantage. So we're going to have AFC versus NFC, and now there's only one NFC out of the 5 international games. Mm-hmm. Are those all 9:30 UK starts? Germany usually early.
6, aren't they? The Germany one will be different. They're an hour ahead of the UK, I think. Frankfurt.
They're all morning starts for us, though.
Yeah,
usually
of some description.
Great stuff. It's just great. The real schedule's coming out tomorrow night. I'm surprised they don't have a show to announce the announcing of the schedule day.
They probably do, right? Oh, the show to announce the announcing?
Yeah,
of the
like a big show to announce. Thursday is when we're going to do the schedule announcement.
Yeah. I'm kind of fascinated by how big a thing the schedule release is, you know?
Well, like you said, this is the one sport where people do.
I don't think that's what it is, though. Like, people
make
are genuinely. It's one of those things where I'm happy to exist on an island as a minority that just doesn't get it. But people love this.
Because you work in it and you're never going to travel.
It's not. It's not the traveling thing.
The NFL made it a thing. The NFL made it into a thing.
There's definitely a group of people that are interested in the schedule to plan trips. But there's a whole world of people that are not, that are still interested in the schedule for reasons that pass my understanding.
When I'm commissioner of college football, they will implement a lot of these hype tactics that the NFL does. College football has not used the full calendar properly the way that the NFL does. College football does not do, they have recruiting like right after the season, right? And then college football news is just over once recruiting's over. They're getting better, the transfer portal, but they need to change the transfer portal windows to be one of the NFL openings. You can't have the transfer portal window in the middle of the NFL draft. The transfer portal window, if you're called, when I'm commissioner of college football, the transfer portal window should happen as soon as the draft ends. So then it's like this frenzy of there's undrafted free agency, there's a transfer portal, and then it goes into May during the NFL's dead time here, right? And then you change the scheduling, right? College football doesn't need to have, Florida and Utah have a home and home in 2039. Can't wait. Like, get your tickets now. Enough of that. Schedule it in April. Right away, do a big schedule release for college football, for the non-conference games and the conference games, even though you already know who you're playing. You could do way more. But that's why the schedule thing matters for the NFL. Because they've hyped it up.
I like that you've teed that up with when I'm commissioner of college football, we've got from Monday's show. You're going to want to tune into Monday's show. You don't know about this because we're doing it behind your back and you're just going to have to roll with it. But we've got a really cool segment teed up for Monday where, you're going to get to display some of your genius. So for people listening, tune in on Monday.
This is one of our emails?
For Steve, also tune in on Monday because you're going to find out what it is as well.
Do I need time to do some
you're
research?
Good. Don't worry about it. All right, we're moving on to something else. That's enough schedule talk. Clearly.
It's way more than needed.
Right. One of the things we want to find out is, or talk about, this has been a story the last couple of days. Can Kadarius Toney actually end up being a number 1 wide receiver in Kansas City? Not by default, but can he actually take that role and embody a number 1 wide receiver the way everybody else understands the term?
Let's define wide receiver 1. Let's go back and define this thing called wide receiver 1.
Okay.
Personally, I think there's 15 or 20 of them in the NFL. It's not like the highest.
So you're not simply.
It's not the receiving yards leader.
Right. On the team.
Yeah. I mean, if we're saying he's wide receiver 1, he's in this league of, from A.J. Brown and Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams all the way down to who's the worst wide receiver 1. I think the Chargers guys, when healthy, are like fringe wide receiver 1 types. I mean, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen.
So simply leading a team in targets, yards, whatever total you want to put on it is not necessarily an achievement for wide receiver 1 throughout the NFL because there are some teams where that's not an achievement. Having said that, if you were to be the leading target, yardage, touchdown guy in Kansas City, it means you have bigger numbers than Travis Kelce, which probably does act as a fair qualifier. Like if he comes out of next season and he has numbers that rival or beat Kelce's, he's a number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, you'd probably be able to make that point.
So, you could argue last season Juju was their number 1 wide receiver, right? And as you predicted, by the way.
I did. Got that. Did you give me lunch or something?
God, no, because you got everything else in the world wrong.
Go to Alabama's today.
But Juju had, in the regular season, 97 targets, 78 catches, 933 yards, and 3 touchdowns, which is a pretty miserable total for a wide receiver in today's NFL. But to beat Kelce, You need 151 targets, 111 catches, 1,339 yards, and 13 touchdowns. That's a wide receiver 1 by pretty much anybody's standards.
Look, I could see it happening. I mean, my instant reaction is, how did they use Kadarius Toney last year? I know they got him, in the middle of the season, and they didn't get to fully implement him. But he had during regular and postseason, 23 catches for just under 10 yards per catch, 3 touchdowns, a good receiving grade, 76, and they moved him around a bunch. There was a lot of gimmick stuff. Now, the similarities to Tyreek Hill could be, in 2016, that was what Tyreek Hill was. It was like, here's this super fast 5th rounder with running back skills and wide receiver skills, and he became their jet sweep, space player, satellite player. And that's what Kadarius Toney started out as. So if you want to make that comparison and say, okay, he's got a full offseason with Mahomes and the Chiefs and all that stuff, Kadarius Toney's going to be the wide receiver 1. They do lose Juju's 88 catches and 1,000+ yards, but I don't think anybody, Juju put up good numbers, but nobody was like, oh, he's a wide receiver 1. It's just he's a receiver with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
They had all these undefined roles last year, which I think made the offense so good, that Juju worked mostly underneath stuff. Valdez-Scantling was your deep threat. Justin Watson, before you know it, became a random deep threat too, where they had shot plays. I think they're going to run the offense like that. Travis Kelce's going to be your high volume guy, and then everyone else is just kind of being a part of the offense, and that made Mahomes better. Just saying, here, find the open guy. I don't know if Toney's going to be like a force-fed number 1, if that's part of the question.
I mean, in 7 games last season with the Chiefs, he had 16 targets on 171 yards. It would take a massive seismic shift in what he's doing in his deployment to be a number 1 wide receiver for them.
3.5 average depth of target. So like I said, they could say, hey, we've done this with Tyreek Hill before, where we turned him from gimmick player into top receiver, but I wouldn't compare Toney to Tyreek Hill. All that said, Toney had that one game.
Yeah.
Had that one game,
against Dallas.
As a rookie against Dallas in 2021, where he was a high volume, 10 catches, looked like a superstar. For one game, maybe Kansas City could unlock that.
That's the thing where I think you sort of look and say, all right, if we talk conceptually about what a number 1 wide receiver is, to me it's less about targets and volume, and it's more about, can you win at all levels of the field? Can you win from all alignments? That's a number 1 wide receiver to me. You think of any of these guys, Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, whoever the number 1 wide receiver you want to talk about is, Jamar Chase, and you say, can they win from everywhere? Can they win at all levels? Can they win in all alignments? The answer is yes to all of them, right? Every one of those guys wins in a variety of different ways, and that's what makes them a number 1 wide receiver. I think Toney does have that capacity. Now, again, we haven't seen it as much as those other guys, but you look from a skill set standpoint and what he's good at, what he struggles with, he's got the size, he's got the quickness, he's got the speed. He can do all that. We saw it in that Dallas game. You could make him into that number 1 wide receiver. But with Kansas City, I feel like it's just a repeat of the conversation we had last year, where we were trying to predict who their primary receiver would be. Travis Kelce's their number 1 receiver, but who's going to lead the team in terms of wide receiver numbers? Will it be Juju? Will it be Sky Moore? Will it be Marquez Valdez-Scantling? I think he has the ability to lead that, to be the Juju guy, get 900 yards, a couple of touchdowns, 50, 75 catches, something like that. I don't think there's any real chance that he overhauls Travis Kelce.
The other interesting thing is there's another cat and mouse game here with the NFL, where last year at this time it's like, oh boy, can the Chiefs ever adjust to too high? The team's taking away their deep ball and all that stuff, and they answered by having more yards after the catch than any team in NFL history or whatever it was last year. And Mahomes played a cleaner brand of football, took everything underneath. Was it Toney on both touchdowns in the Super Bowl where they were just wide open on that return, the return jet sweep return motion thing? I mean, it's the scheme plus Mahomes and the execution and all that stuff, right? That adds up to they're really, really good. So how does the NFL respond now? Are they going to start playing it a little bit tighter? Where, again, Valdez-Scantling was a good deep threat, as he has been. Justin Watson averaged over 19 yards per catch. He's a pretty good athlete who could get down the field. But you're still not looking at the Chiefs receivers and afraid of them. But it's the combination of Mahomes is going to find the open guy, and Andy Reid's going to give him open guys to throw to that make them difficult. But you're not looking at this receiving core saying, I'm afraid of this group. So I want to see how the NFL comes back and if they challenge them a little bit. But I think the Chiefs just have obviously such a well-rounded group where Tony and Sky Moore and Valdez-Scantling all have their own skills here. Add Rashee Rice to the mix here. I think they're going to spread the wealth. And if Tony led the receivers in yards, no, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I think he definitely has the capacity to replace that Juju role and be their leading receiver, wide receiver, which will be a secondary threat in that offense to Travis Kelce. So I think he's probably the front runner to do that, right?
Walt is pretty convinced that Travis Kelce is like Tom Brady. He'll be able to play forever. That he's going to be 34 this year, Kelce. Yeah. I don't think there was a point where it looked like maybe he had lost a step a little bit, but I don't think that. I think he's gotten it back.
He's gotten it back.
You know what I mean? I think he's fine. I've seen we have some.
You don't often see people find a step after they lose the step.
Well, you thought Tom Brady lost something in 2013. He found it again.
But he hadn't lost a step. He just lost the ability to play well for a while.
Yeah. Well, it depends on which tracking numbers you're potentially looking at. But athleticism-wise, we have some numbers that say Travis Kelce's been the same guy over the last 4 years. He still just looks a step faster than everybody else trying to cover him, much like Mahomes. I don't know how they have that ability. They're just a step faster than everybody when they need to be, when they run. But that's like the next test, I think, for Mahomes. Last year I thought, hey, losing Tyreek Hill is a test. Passed it perfectly. What happens when they do lose Kelce just a little bit and you don't have? He's still such an X factor for that team that opens up everything else. So,
yeah, I mean they don't have an alternative to that. They're going to need one at some stage. As much as he doesn't look like he's slowing down right now, it has to happen. It's sooner or later. Otherwise, it would be absurd. Like he's 10 months younger than Gronk, who's been retired twice, including for a year already. At some stage, he should start slowing down.
While I have you, did just get an email about people. Many of the emails are asking us to draft things,
yes.
Right? Current NFL players, build your best team by division.
So you should stick around for the next two shows.
Yeah. The expansion draft that somebody had suggested. Yeah. And when I hear that, I'm just overwhelmed by setting it up and all that stuff. But we have a dedicated listener who I have met. I did meet at Sloan, by the way, one of our dedicated listeners. Oh. And he said he would set up the expansion draft for us, do all the legwork to kind of set things up so we could draft. That might need to be a thing that we do.
How does that work?
If we're going to do, you have to have, okay, here's a list of, here's all the rosters, here's all the protected players, here's your.
Oh, so he's actually going to do the other 31 teams or the other 32 teams.
Yeah, so we know who the talent pool is. I mean, right. The hardest part about setting up the expansion draft is all the legwork to say, okay, what's the pool of players, what's the process and all that stuff. He's going to do that work. I would do it if does the work
somebody
for me.
Presents me a list of players.
Yeah,
let's draft them.
That sounds great. Let's do an expansion draft at some point. We should. The other thing is, what if we were both expansion teams?
Yeah, like we got to do two.
So you're the silly nannies and whatever.
Right. You can't have one. It breaks the system. There's 32 teams now.
So we both get an expansion team to build from scratch.
Okay.
Right now.
Right.
We should also, I think, to make this good, we should pretend that this happened, say in February. We draft our team, and then the NFL draft happens.
Well, how did it work when the Texans had their draft? Was that before?
I think they got the veterans first, and then the draft happened.
Because then they got David Carr.
Yes.
Right. Gotcha.
So we should pretend it's the beginning of free agency, right?
We'd have to flip a coin for who gets the number one pick.
Surely, you have to. So then we would each get 7 picks in the NFL draft, and it would be the first or second pick of each round. And so we could go with who was available on the board at that given time. Okay. So if you get the first pick, you can draft Bryce Young.
Right.
And I'll have to debate C.J. Stroud, or maybe I'll take Will Anderson. You never know.
You would punt.
I would try to trade down.
Expansion team.
I would go into the mock draft simulator and trade down for 15
No,
picks.
you would be like, we're an expansion team. We're going to stink year one anyway. I'm getting Caleb Williams next year. Like that's what you would do. I know that. I don't even need the debate.
Yeah, I would take You're right. I would take Will Anderson. Uh-huh. You're actually right, as an expansion team.
Right.
I
knew what you were doing. Literally, I knew what you were doing before you knew what you were doing.
Thank you for reminding me. I'm in on this. Walt will not be my scouting director.
Okay.
Don, in the chat. I will not take Walt.
All right. We got one more question before we have to do tomorrow's shows.
before we wrap it up.
Yeah.
It's a quick show today, theoretically.
Email from Tyler Landis, who essentially asks, what's the difference between PFF grade and PFF WAR? Says it seems like they should be tighter correlated. And this was the guy, by the way, that gave us the relative athletic score for the Bear. So, we owe him an answer.
We do.
He's done
we
us
do
a
owe
solid
an
in the
answer.
past.
Yeah. So what's the difference between grades and WAR?
Yep. And why are they not, much more tightly correlated, judging by from his outside look as when we mention them every now and again?
Okay, for the nerds out there, and I use that term
With affection.
with all sorts of affection. But if you're into reading white papers, I'm not. But if you're into reading white papers, there's a WAR white paper out there from Dr. Eager.
For those of us that are not nerd inclined, what is a white paper?
It's a nerdy explanation of the research, basically.
Okay, gotcha.
How's that?
Perfect.
It's a detailed, process-oriented explanation of how you came up with the metric. And also, why is WAR not available? WAR is exclusive to PFF IQ, which is the latest product that is exclusive to NFL teams, because it is quite important in some of their team building efforts, especially if you use it properly. We might need to release it at some point, though. Maybe we could just release the WAR numbers at some point and figure it out. We're debating that internally all the time. So basically, WAR is adding value to the grades. So one of the questions we wanted to ask for years was, okay, a 90 safety and a 90 receiver. Clearly, they might be the same level of play at their respective position, but which one's actually more valuable, right? When you're actually making team building decisions, would you, in a vacuum, rather have a 90 graded safety or a 90 graded receiver? So that's where WAR comes in, because it's basically putting value to the actual grades. And the other difference is where the grade comes from. So say a linebacker will have a run defense grade, a coverage grade, and a pass rush grade. We're going to weigh those based off a couple different variables. And WAR has really leaned into stability. It's stability and value. Which are the facets that lead to winning? But I think maybe even more importantly, which are the facets are you really confident that you have captured what's on the field more than others? So basically, because our run defense and run blocking grades are really consistent year to year, we can have more confidence that we are properly accrediting players in those areas. And because they're more stable, they might actually weigh a little bit higher in the WAR metric. So long story short, WAR is just adding a value and stability to our grades, and also volume. So we also have had debates for years about, from a grading standpoint, how do you grade someone who played at a certain level for 500 snaps and another guy for 1,000 snaps? Well, if you're playing average or better football for 1,000 snaps, you're adding more value to your team because you're on the field more. You're adding more actual value to your team than the guy who plays half as many snaps at a similar level. So WAR is based off the grades, where the grades are most valuable and stable, and then how often a player is doing it. And again, what we found with the WAR metric is teams that have more WAR win more games. Teams that are above, I think it's like 7 WAR, or your 10-win teams all average, say, 5 to 7 WAR. Your 7 to 9 win teams, it's below that, and it does correlate pretty well to wins. I think again in the white paper you'll see, like, when it's calculated, you're basically taking a player and taking him off the team, taking his contributions off the team and simulating the wins, and then putting him back on the team and simulating the wins and seeing what the difference is. So that's the gist of how it's done. And I think that's, I think for NFL teams, there is a lot of signal in using this metric and using that metric in different ways, tying it to salary, tying it to team building decisions that will lead to more wins over time.
All right.
How's that?
Yeah, good.
That's
Well
it?
done.
You have anything to add to that?
Not really. You're the
okay.
you're the WAR guy.
I am. I mean, I'm like the simple
that, I mean,
explanation
yeah.
WAR guy. I'm not the modeler for this. But again, the draft model that I've made is all tied toward predicting WAR, and I think predicting WAR is a good thing. Mm-hmm. So, if you're talking to people in the chat, what are you talking about here? I can't play. I used to play Madden. I'm not like a good Madden player because I wanted to just replicate football too much. So I would never lean into, the plays that always work, throwing jump balls to Randy Moss over and over again. All the the glitchy plays that always seem to work.
Yeah.
I would lean away from those because I wasn't trying to beat the game. I was trying to do good football stuff. So I was never like a good Madden player.
No, I mean, we're way overdue some form of Madden involved stream with the two of us. Like that should be one of our off-season shows somewhere along the way. We talked a little bit off air, I think, about what it could look like. There's also just playing a game, like all kinds of stuff we could do with Madden. We should definitely do that at some point during the off-season. Also, I forgot that we should do a Mutant League football game. Stream that. That'd be good.
No.
You must have played the original one, right?
No.
You never played the original Mutant League football.
Listen to me.
Mutant League hockey? Did you do either of them?
No.
No. You were a realism component with 1990s.
I have no interest in any of that. Listen,
you were into 8-bit realism. Is that your argument here?
I mean, I played ice hockey with the fat guys,
Right.
skinny guys, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I never played any Mutant League anything.
So you were only but that's
Any game that didn't have real players, real names, I stuck my nose up at it.
So Mutant League football had when you don't get the rights to something and you have to make up the fake names. So they made up the fake names because obviously they didn't have the rights to the NFL guys, but they they were sort of kind of NFL players.
Yeah.
So Bo Jackson was Bones Jackson, when he was a skeleton.
Yeah.
So they did
Bones,
it that
yeah,
way.
yeah.
Yeah. It was pretty good.
That's good, yeah. No, I listen, the deep dark secrets are the deep dark message boards that I was on, renaming every player in college football when it came out in 2002. Sending memory cards to people with either the named rosters or my buddy Mike and I, who were both in college, exchanging memory cards. Like, all right, you name the SEC, I'll name the ACC. I couldn't play a game until I had everybody's name in there, and it was no longer just QB number 8.
People just don't appreciate how much of a pain in the ass doing things was pre-internet.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Mailing people memory
PlayStation
cards.
2, you could send people a memory card,
Yeah.
and they would
The little great
load.
things.
Yeah,
Right.
they would load the named rosters, and then they would send it back for like $10 or whatever it was.
Absolute pain in the ass.
Yeah, and so the first year I tried to name it myself, and it's like, man, we're going good, and you're like, man, I've got like 50 teams to go.
Yeah.
Been doing this for weeks. So eventually I just started sending the memory card.
Yeah.
And then, MLB The Show. Because I was in the message boards, the people that were making the MLB The Show rosters that had AAA and AA teams, they were mostly made up, but they would fix all the rosters, get all the right players. I made sure that I was in there. Even though I wasn't a prospect, I was in the video game because I was like, hey guys, did you think the relief pitcher Palazzolo should be on the Connecticut Defenders here?
Yeah.
Like, no, he's like the 30th best player on the team. We only have 25 spots. I'm like, no, you got to get him in. He's going to go places. So I was in the video game in that roster set. That's the world I lived in. None of this Mutant League stuff.
I'm just saying, the original Mutant League football was an awesome Genesis Mega Drive game. You missed out. Mutant League hockey was good too.
I never played that in Genesis. What was that? I played Madden in Genesis.
You could bribe.
I hated Game Day when it came out in Genesis because it was so unrealistic compared to Madden.
You could bribe the refs, to give you a call. But then once they did,
Yeah, I'm not playing any of this.
Once they did, the opposing team would have to kill him because they're getting screwed. Otherwise, he'd keep giving them calls, so you could go kill the ref. Oh, you missed out. It was a good game.
Yeah. The other
Anyway,
my other video game highlight was NCAA 06 or whatever it was in 2006. I'm playing in Montana for the summer, and two of my teammates and I, all we did is recruit all year, and we all night after games, and nothing to do in Montana. So we made it to like the year 2086 or something like that, recruiting nonstop. Good times.
Anyway, we'll be doing something.
Let's wrap it
with
up.
Madden.
People can relate to this. People are watching us talk about old video games. We should do more of that.
We're practically Twitch streamers right now.
We're basically, yeah. I mean, there's a whole world there that we could partake in.
Uh-huh.
All right, is that it?
Yep.
All right, thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow. What are we doing tomorrow?
We are
Right now?
drafting legends for each of the 32 NFL teams, essentially making them better by adding one prior team legend to their roster.
Oh, this will be good. A little NFL history here.
Uh-huh.
All right, let's do it. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow with more PFF NFL Podcast.